Everyone in Oakland is kind of a vibe, though. That's the fun part. Right behind us is every kind of family. I'm counting at least 30 kids here.
It's 31. 32.
32. Oh my God, they're gonna fall.
And counting.
So with that,
hi everybody. I'm Sam.
and I'm Warren.
And we are City People.
The people.
Welcome, guys.
Yeah, welcome.
We have friends. We're not so lonely after all.
Right. These are the sum total of all of my friends in the city.
No. We have a little bit more, but like this is a great group. It's all about, quality.
Absolutely.
Right? So we are at Prescott Market in
Right.
Oakland, California, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And we are asking a very simple question, and a kind of a strange one, I guess, which is, why are there so many kids at breweries? There used to be dogs.
Yeah.
It was like a thing. And now there's kids at breweries. So like as a parent, brewery is like the golden ticket to joy. I bring my kid, they play with the big Jengas, and I have a beer, and we're all happy. The economy
Or
is
Paloma.
or a
Frozen Paloma.
Should we cheers? Clink.
Cheers to city people and city Palomas.
And so who do we have with us, Warren?
All right. To my right is Danielle Harris.
Hey.
Look at the camera. Look
Let's
at
say
his hair.
hi.
Have you seen his hair? Jesus.
My most beautiful friend in the whole wide world. Sorry, Jeff.
Jeff also has a really glorious beard. We'll zoom in on this later,
Yeah.
but just look at it.
Jeff Hoover.
Jeff Hoover. Welcome. And actually, let's say like our kids' ages, if that's okay, or ish, if you'd like to share.
I have a 4-year-old daughter.
Amazing.
I have a 2.5-year-old son named Elijah.
Lovely. I have a 5-year-old. And then we have Audrey, also beautiful, stunning, flawless face. Look at this.
Look at her.
I have the joy of having a 9-year-older, an 8-year-older, who are back there, and a 2.5-year-older.
And look
And
who
another
just
one.
another
Oh my-
handsome beard just joined us.
Biggie, if you could tell everyone who you are, the age of your son, and that's it.
Hey, my name is Biggie. I am a father to a lovely 18-month-old baby named Yash. Yeah, live in Oakland and love it here.
And you got a very sizable beer here.
Yeah.
And you brought that glass.
With him. Yeah.
with you. So how often do you come here?
Yeah.
Is my question. It's a literal
It's not a
question.
call out.
No, it's not a call out. It's data.
Yeah, it's data.
Honestly, I'm more frugal than I am a lush.
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay.
So that is, how do I get one?
Yeah, can we get
And
one?
should I get one?
Get one.
A mug like that.
Yeah, you get one right over here at Almanac.
It's like a Das Boot, but like a take home.
Right, it's a Stein. But the cool thing is, and this will take us actually squarely into our subject today, Almanac has a deal here where if you buy a Stein pitcher, then basically the beers are half off from then on. So it really encourages
Half
parents.
off? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, so for the size of a Stein, you get a pint cost. And it's amazing.
What I'm hearing is I can't afford to not do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The frugal father.
Right.
Okay, Biggie will be back, but
Biggie
keep
will
going.
be back. He might have had a dirty diaper or something that
He's
we.
grabbing a pizza.
Oh, he's grabbing a pizza. I think. What do you guys think it is about this space specifically that is like either comfortable or makes you feel like you could bring your kids to or want to bring your kids to? I mean, this is like kind of an easy question as parents to be answering, but like for people who maybe don't experience this or have lush parks right outside of their door or no cars like rushing through their cul-de-sac, like what is this for you?
I think there's the parent answer, and then there's sort of the urban answer. The parent answer is exactly like you said. There are no cars speeding through here. You could turn your back on your kid and not worry about their life and death well-being. The sort of the urban answer is like the little microcosm of the ski village or Disney World or whatever, where you have 8 or 9 different options all within a stone's throw, and everybody can make their choice, and you can play, you can sit, you can commune, and everyone
just be.
No one has to leave their table.
It sounds like freedom
Yeah,
to me. It's just choice, being safe in those choices,
that's right.
having options.
It's the reason we live in a city.
Audrey, you have a face. What's the face?
But just to add on, I mean, there's some obvious things. There's a huge sand pit back there.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of parks nowadays, they don't even
don't
have
have sand.
sand.
Or at
pits.
least they're not clean.
That part.
Like they rake the sand pit every day. They have toys. I mean, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but I'm counting maybe 15 kids in a sand pit that might be 6 by 6.
Yeah.
So it's easy to maintain. It's like a litter box that you can actually.
Not a litter box for kids. Viggy, what we're
It sounds
asking
like
is
that gets raked out too,
right.
if it happens.
Well, and everyone, welcome back, Viggy, with pizza, an emergency pizza, and a sign. We're asking everyone, like, what are the factors about the space that make it so welcoming for parents and their kids?
That's a good question. I think it's like little things. It's having turf. There's sort of like safety in the way it's designed. So like, there's only really like one way in or out, and it's into a parking lot. Unfortunately for my little boy, he loves cars. So he, of course, wants to go in the parking lot. But there's like a lot of people that are in the way between anywhere that you are over here and that parking lot. And I think I'll leave it at that for now.
All right. Danielle, what do you think?
Yeah, Danielle.
Yeah, I would say I think overall for me, it embraces the chaos that comes with kids.
Yeah.
And it's not like anyone has to be ashamed that their child won't sit down for a 30-minute, 45-minute meal.
Totally.
And it's actually everyone's child is roaming, so it feels really comfortable.
Like the collective agreement that
it's
kids will be running around.
And it kind of encapsulates like it takes a village because like everyone's kind of like, I think that one's yours. It's running over there. Because I had the same concern about the parking lot, but like my son Elijah has never made it to the parking lot, even though he's definitely made the effort. And then like
We can all see if a kid's running that way, I think we've all kind of joined forces to say, I don't see your parent, but let me stop you from the imaginary fence here.
yeah, so I think it's all the design elements, but I also think it just like creates like this like bubble of community for this brief moment. Yes, I think like having options matters, even though my child will only eat French fries. They do. They do.
have those fries.
They have pizza.
What do you know? And we're going to talk actually to the owner and the manager of this wonderful establishment as to like, was this intentional and all those things? Because it's like this magic just comes together. It turns out what adults like, also like kids like. But we mentioned a lot of things. We mentioned safety.
Yeah.
We mentioned freedom. We mentioned roaming. I think like that's a really important one. Like what's like, again, this is for some people who maybe not be thinking about it, or maybe people who are building cities who are not thinking about this. Like what's the daily fear that you have about your child walking down the streets in your city? And like, what's the worst case scenario? What has happened to you? Like, what has happened to you?
Share your trouble, if you don't mind sharing. Tell us about your pain.
What happened to you?
I mean, thankfully nothing has happened, but I've heard of things happen. But like my kids, we have a fence around our yard. But one of the fears of them roaming around the sidewalk outside of the yard is that they just run after a ball. That's really common. Or somebody speeding down the streets and gets a little too close. Or they trip.
Yeah, but the fear is the bigger thing, I assume, that is going 20 miles an hour and made of 2 tons of metal or whatever it is.
Well, and it's funny. I have a nephew who's turning 3 this month, and watching my brother run after him at like any speed. Oh my God, I hope he doesn't trip. I hope he doesn't trip. And you realize how even just the concrete that all of us as adults can just walk on without hopefully tripping, myself included, can be kind of dangerous for kids that are a little less sure-footed, right? But this space has turf for most of the area around here, right? In including the sand pit, right? And that is saying something.
Right. More than concrete.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, what do you think?
I mean, the concrete, I'm a little less concerned about. Like, look, am I excited about my kid scraping her knee or whatever? No, but that's impermanent. It's part of childhood. The thing I'm terrified about are cars. And not to take a dark turn, but like that is very real for my family. My father-in-law was killed by a car. He was riding his bike about 3 years ago to get a coffee and was killed by a car. And so this is a like visceral thing that my family deals with. And like on my ride over here, I rode an e-bike over here, and my wife was like, well, it's going to be dark when you're done, and like, is that going to be safe? And those are, of course, like, fair and horrifying questions that we have to ask. And like, there's nothing that brings my daughter more joy than riding her bike. And so we have this personal family story that we have a kid who wants to be free and wants to have fun, and this like terrible family story that has has a very like horrible outcome as a result of, wanting that. And, it's a real challenge, because like, I'm sure as millennial parents, we've all read Anxious Generation. We've all seen the research of like, you need to let your kids roam free and have fun and like be unsupervised and all the things. And it's like, I'm all for that until there's a car going 40 miles an hour down
a
our
residential
15
street.
mile an hour street. And it's like, I can control for a lot of things, but I'm never going to be able to control for that. And I don't know how to reconcile those things.
But Jeff, you bring up a really good point, is like the idea of freedom for kids. Like, for folks who don't know, Audrey's kids are running around somewhere back here.
Which is a beautiful thing
When,
to
put it
be
this way,
able to do that.
we actually don't quite know where they are.
But wait, it's okay.
You see them, right? But that's the point, though, right? And tell me how that feels
feel
right now.
them.
That like, it shouldn't feel too prickly because they're here somewhere.
They're here somewhere, and we had a conversation too.
And we had a conversation.
That's the ability I have in having the 8 and 9-year-olders here. The 2.5-year-older, not so much. But we had a conversation. Say where I could see you. If you need something, tap me on the shoulder, and don't go out in the parking lot. Easy.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that's so fascinating to me about this space. And Vicky's kind of mentioned this too, or everyone has, that except for this parking lot, it's kind of hard to exit this space, especially without people seeing. And I want to bring up something that Danielle had mentioned, and I'll double tap on that a little bit, is like the sort of tribe mentality or the community aspect, that when you enter this space, I think we're all, like, even as a person without a kid, like, I'm even dialed into, like, I know that if a kid passes me and I don't see a parent running after them, that might be okay. But if they continue too much farther towards the parking lot, I just kind of know that maybe I'll give a quick look and go grab that kid if I don't see a parent yet. And that is, I think, the big brackets community that we're all focused on as like participants, as city people, is that we're in it together in a way. Freedom.
Freedom? Question mark.
I do want to double tap on Jeff's point about the vehicle thing.
Yeah.
I will say, regardless if we follow all the rules and we stop at all the stops and we're at the right speed. Elijah and I were crossing Park, and it was green for us. It was red for the cars, and one of the cars that was in waiting decided he didn't want to wait anymore, and he drove into the bike lane. He didn't see us, and he almost sideswiped
Oh my
us.
gosh.
And so there's a lot of red light running, and there's just
Yeah.
like a lot of that happening on our streets, and just like pure lack of adherence. And like that is upsetting,
Yeah.
and it makes me really like question being in a city anymore.
Yeah. Well, because it's not worth it in many ways, right? It's like, yes, free range kids. Like, there is a generation that we're bringing up to like live and roam and do and learn, right, through those experiences. But in my mind, I'm not making a calculation around, should I expose this much risk and have them be the experiment? I would rather, like, the car, like, do the experiment for us so that we know it's safe. Like, that's not a trade-off that I'm willing to make. But Viggy, I'm curious if you've had near experiences or just like what you've seen that you fear the most when we have this little guy loving cars, going up to them, touching the wheels, hopefully not while they're moving.
He actually does that.
Oh
Loves
my
it. Touches the license plate. He's so curious. It was like his fourth word was car.
Of course.
No, I mean, I kind of want to get back to like, I think like a different piece of this, which was like about like kids being watched. Because I think there's like a little bit where I think when like designers think about designing cities, there are like a million companies that are selling like cameras everywhere and stuff like that. And
Surveillance.
Yeah. I don't think we need like an urban panopticon, like, like I think what we're like really looking for, but like I think you need
That
like
was an advanced word for city people.
like kids, like the whole thing about kids develop when they think they're not being watched. Like that's when like kids really have the ability to grow. And so like the beauty of a space like this is not that everyone is like ongoingly watching them or there's something like that. It's that there are enough people around that would interfere because it's a space that's for families. So it's like this kind of like, it's not like someone's going to come and be like, what are you doing? It's just more so like, well, we'll make sure you don't get in too much trouble, right?
Totally.
And I think of that as being the kind of safety that like creates like real safety, like real psychological safety, as opposed to like anxiety or like building out of anxiety that like, oh no, things are going to harm kids. It's like, even with cars, it's like the whole thing is you need like an environment in which kids understand how to navigate around cars. That's like a different question, right?
Well, and I would say that, like, and Jeff, and Audrey is running around finding her kid somewhere, that
Parents coming and
there
going.
is a certain age where they can feel the surveillance, where my son looks around and he's like, is someone watching me? And like, what mistakes can I make? And there's like this newfound freedom in being able to like literally do this while nobody's watching you. And I've seen him do that. And I think there's a freedom to that, but it's also like it's not just like freedom. It's actually like I'm learning. These synapses are building in my brain that I can like take risks in a healthy way, And I think it's really important that they be able to do that.
When I actually would put a little bit of the onus, the identity back on the parents that, I have a lot of friends that have 2 and 3-year-olds right now. I've noticed that lately. I'm like, wow, I don't have kids, but all my friends have kids now. And one of the things that they've described, though, is in their effort to, in some ways, constantly surveil their kids, they have also lost the ability to be people themselves in a way. And I'm curious, you all as parents are also like none of us are old. And I'm curious what it's like almost to, I don't know, people have described it almost as like being lonely as a parent. If you can talk about that a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I just turned 40, Warren, so not old is,
You're welcome.
relative statement, maybe. No, that's such an interesting question. And I just want to say, I couldn't agree more with Biggie, what you had to say. It's like a very Jane Jacobs mentality of just having like the neighborhood version of like eyes on the street, but also the opportunity to simultaneously like teach your kid a bit of like responsibility and from the youngest age teaching, like you have to look both ways. And it is a good environment to kind of teach them that. But, Warren, I very much hear what you say, where it's like, I think a space like this is such a great opportunity to like shirk a little bit of that feeling off, where it's like you can be an adult, you can come and have beers with your friends, and you can let your kids cut loose a little bit and be kids, but you can let that happen in the same space. And I think that's such a wonderful and like really sadly unique environment where you can do all of those things at once.
What do you guys think?
I guess I kind of feel like there are days where, of course, I'm like missing my old life, where I'm thinking about all of the freedom to roam.
Turn it up in the club.
And so some days it feels like parenting is like the new smoking, in the sense of there's no place where we're supposed to be. You go to the doctor's office
20 feet away
and they're like,
from the door.
he's coughing and he's not covering his mouth. It's because he's 2. Like, or you go to the grocery store and they're touching everything. Or like my son, yes, he likes to touch all the cars in the parking lot. And I'm like, those are dirty, And then, but I think the
like
restaurant, they're licking all the thing. But the restaurant is the hardest one because they want them to sit. They want them to be quiet. They don't want them to roam. They don't want them to make a mess. Yeah, yes. This weekend, my son threw up all over IKEA cafeteria. Okay?
Surely not the first time the IQ hearing.
Exactly. And they were all stunned. Everybody that worked there. And I was like, if you can't do it here, where can you do it? So I just feel like a lot of it is just like, I think a lot of the loneliness comes from there doesn't feel like there's a place for us. Like, this used to be like you go over to your parents' house or whatever, and everyone's kind of like mingling. But now it's like we have to create these centers ourselves, and that's why like the beer garden seems to be the spot.
I don't mean to keep talking, but I'm so happy you said that, because like I think the loneliness feeling, like even if you're surrounded by people, comes, at least for me individually, comes from just like the anxiety of like, is my kid behaving how they're supposed to behave? Am I being as good of a parent as I could be? And this feeling that like, and like to tie in the surveillance question of like, are we all doing what we're supposed to collectively be doing? Am I doing a good enough job? Is like such a rushing weight at times. And that's so hard. And it's so nice to hear that, but B, also like see other kids being little monsters. And being like, you know what, my kid's done that. My kid's done worse. My kid's not that bad. Like, and so it's like, it is just so humanizing.
Yeah.
Like for the kid and for the parent.
Audrey, you've got the 3.
Yes, I got 3. This notion of little kids like being looked at if they're moving around at a restaurant. I kind of didn't have to worry about that with my first 2. I was oblivious to it all. I've heard of the stories.
Close in age.
They're very close in age. and they grew up. Their early years were during the pandemic, and they had each other as best friends. And they're growing up, and they do little tit for tats, but they love each other. And you can see like Kailani's a big reader, and then Zion started reading. So I think they feed off each other's energy, and it's really cute. And so maybe Kailani like set the tone. It was like, this is how you act at a restaurant.
No, you don't act on restaurant.
But number 3, this is the reality. Yes, wild card. He does not like a high chair. He wants to be a big kid.
Because his siblings.
Right, because his siblings. And that's only natural, right? But they have each other. They also have cousins. And so whenever we go to restaurants, we like to do family style. Like we just went dim sum 2 weeks ago with my brothers and his kids. Yes, my little one was probably the most active, but like all of them were like boogers, food dropping, and we weren't the only family in there doing that. And so there's like, in addition to this space right here, like there are gems out there in this region, and I'm so thankful for them.
Yeah, I mean, is the question still whether it's lonely to be a parent?
It could be whatever you.
Yeah, I mean, we live in the Bay Area, so there's like a lot of people who like work in tech and stuff like that. And now there's like this drive toward, what is it, like the 996 calendar and all this like nonsense where it's like you work from 9 to 9 for 6 days a week. And there's this like relentless drive, I think, for everyone to be working all the time. I think that's actually a different attribute for why parents are lonely. It's like most of the time it's like, I got to get my kid to school. Like, I got to get them to daycare. I got to go do this like other thing. So it's like when I think about like, okay, how do I plan my life so that like I can see friends who have kids and like do something that's like nice and not be thinking about the next thing? Like, I think that's like a luxury that like is worth like sort of fostering. And spaces like this are like really nice because it like creates a place everyone can kind of go.
And you could just drop by.
Yeah.
You don't have to schedule ahead of time.
Yeah, and you don't have to stay for like, yeah, kind of. But it's also, I think, like having more of this and having it more sort of like disaggregated. It's not necessarily like this is the one place you can go, but like rather that it's like, why doesn't every neighborhood have a little park that you can get to and like hang out at and like, that also like doesn't care if you bring a beer because they're worried that you're drinking in public. All of the things like together.
Figgy, I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I'm going to pivot us slightly because, and I mentioned this earlier, right? We brought together our close friends who are parents, but for our listeners,
Have a little surprise.
yeah, there's a little surprise, which is that everyone sitting around us is also kind of a transportation planner. Oh my God, shocking.
Surprise!
And to your point, Viggy, and I think we're all kind of dancing around this a little bit as our experiences individually as parents. I want to zoom out slightly and talk about the roles that each of you kind of play in building cities. In a way, I'm going to ask you to reintroduce yourselves with respect to your professions, because we're going to talk about this at scale now. Well, I know you've worked for cities. Go ahead.
Feel yourself.
Yes, I'm Danielle Harris. I worked for City of San Francisco for about a decade. I shouldn't say it that way. And then, I worked in nonprofits, helping mobility startups get up and thriving from concept to implementation. And so just really focused on like traditional transportation planning in terms of traffic calming and bus route consolidation and parking removal to introducing new technologies to the street in a way that work for the whole of society and not just laptops and lattes.
Not laptops and
Laptops and
lattes. I
lattes.
love that.
Okay, let this be known too that obviously everybody here, has been in their career before they had kids.
Yeah.
So there's like the identity before kids and the philosophy before kids and then after. And so I'm just like looking at Danielle when we worked together, when we both were childless and young and hot and doing all kinds. Thank you. Thank you. Looking for that. Thank you. It's crazy that you say that.
Oh yeah, I can still see Warren's hair flowing. I don't know if you guys see it, but he still whips it. Okay,
You still do. I mean, you do this all the
he
time.
does a lot of those.
And I'm like, is there a there?
First
But
of
it's
all,
okay.
this podcast is not about ragging on Warren Logan today. So it's not about that either. So with that, Jeff,
with the reveal.
and your reveal.
It's good.
I also knew Warren when he had dreads, so I'm just going to start there.
We're gonna link a photo.
Yes. So
Please do. Yes, I work for a shared micromobility company, the black and teal one.
Not naming any
Names. But I run government partnerships for our company. And so we do a ton of interesting work to sort of figure out how we're going to show up in each different community, from huge city to small college town and everything in between.
Cool. Well, hello again. I'm Audrey Harris. Hello again. I am a transportation planner. I am on my second major city in the Bay Area. Not quite 2 decades, but my goodness, crazy. Approaching two decades in this industry. But I've done anything from working on housing policy to transportation demand management, which is a fancy way of saying I worked on programs to make sure that we had bike racks, bike rooms, and promoting sustainable modes of transportation like transit, getting people out of their vehicles or giving people options, right? We're not forcing anybody. We're creating options for people. And now today, for the last 5 years, I work on major infrastructure projects. And I specifically work on a team really focusing on not only working with partner agencies and engineers, but also really focusing on inclusive community engagement and making sure that people are a part of the process, that they have agency in it, and that we are reporting back how their feedback and how they feel about our projects live in the projects today, which I think is really important and maybe a topic of you as parents.
Audrey, we get it. We're going to have you back on the podcast. You don't have to lay it on so thick. We get it. In addition, I do all these other things. I'll see you tomorrow for the next interview.
My name is Leslie. No.
We're on 2 decades. We're on 2
Biggie, you're last but not leastly.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's cheese pizza. Yeah, I'm Vignesh Ram. I lead public policy for a sidewalk delivery robotics company. You know, I think about like where it sits in relation to this sort of conversation, but you know, everybody knows the statistics: 40,000 vehicular deaths per year. Half of all food delivery orders are shorter than 2 miles. Globally, which basically means that our cities are filled with burrito taxis. And so when you think about what that means in terms of traffic and the types of drivers that are out there, because like we've been talking about cars, we kind of touched on that.
To be hit by a burrito taxi.
Jesus. But don't put it that way.
Sorry. I'm just,
But
okay,
it's-
go on, Biggie.
The thing is, a driver who's doing that is also not a driver who's focusing. It's a
Yeah.
driver who is looking at their phone.
Yeah.
And
Who is constantly turning the volume down to like see where they're going.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're incentivized to go as fast as they can.
And the entire on-demand economy relies on this. So, like, it's not just that. Like, large logistics companies, it's every single thing that people want, like, same day, get it to my house. That is what is, like, making our streets, like, overwhelmingly feel unsustainable. And it's not just those vehicles that are out, whether it's, like, box trucks or cars, but it's also the way in which it affects our built environment, because we've got, like, even at the restaurants or the stores that you purchase from, there's now like 8 people that are outside waiting for an order, and you want to come up. And the thing is, like, during the pandemic, there was a lot of investment into alfresco dining and things that would actually like take back pedestrian space.
And
And
some of that was like the most amazing times for us in a weird way during the pandemic that like I think brought us back together and frankly made some spaces for people to just kind of free range themselves out in the streets. Anyway, Viggy, keep going. Sorry.
yeah, I think that like that sort of devolution of our public space has made it challenging to create this kind of safety. And I think something sort of separate. So like when I was growing up, I think everybody grew up in communities, even suburban communities, that had buses that would go through small suburban streets. Like I grew up outside of Toronto, and the bus system in this city I grew up in would come into your like tiny suburban street, like the street that the cul-de-sacs jumped off of. But like the actual like bus would come down that way. You want to come up? But the thing is, like, kids would still ride their bike. They would hang out. And it didn't seem to affect anyone because a bus driver is not staring at a phone or at something else. They're actually paying attention to what's happening around them. So I don't want to say like, oh no, like it's like the nature of drivers that we see in our cities and the cars themselves has deteriorated over time. And I think that creates like a whole other sort of dynamic that's a little bit scary. Anyway, delivery robots are one way to deal with that.
Well, I have to jump in for two things. One, if we're talking about alfresco dining during the pandemic, we can't ignore Warren's role in creating slow streets and open streets in Oakland, which was an inspiration for cities and in towns all over the country. I also have to ask Viggy, where in the GTA you grew up? Because my wife is from Brampton. I know. Oh, no kidding. Yeah. My wife is from Brampton. She just got her American citizenship last Friday. She is not excited. She's not excited about it. Did it because, we have a child here and did not want to get, stranded out of the country or something like that. Yeah. Go Jays. Yeah. That's all I have to say.
While Sam is focusing on getting our camera back up and running, we are still recording, just so you know. One of the things I want to kind of talk about is each of you mentioned several factors that make this market hall successful, safe, welcoming, enjoyable, dynamic for parents, families, kids of all ages. And I want to kind of ask a kind of a critical question with the following preface. There are two very large public parks, I want to say 3 blocks from this location, that do not have this number of families, kids, parents on such a regular basis. What are some lessons learned, perhaps, and I'm looking especially at our city planners too, right? Like that we might pass over to the parks down the street that the city might adopt to be just as successful as this admittedly private park? That's a big question.
That's the last thing you said is the biggest difference, right? It's private, it's privately funded. They have their own system. I don't know if they have cameras, but if they do, like it's privately owned and privately monitored. Parks in a lot of cities, I think the core of their struggles, if there are struggles, is funding and resources and programming. You can have a beautiful lawn, you can have a beautiful play structure, but if there's no programs, if there's no promotion that this is here, if there's no places of gathering, there are no picnic tables, it doesn't feel as welcome.
I'm going to call, not you, I'm not calling you out, but I'm going to take that to task for a second, because the 2 parks I'm thinking of down the street have benches, they have a lawn, they've got way more trees, right? They had to put all these umbrellas up here. And not to diminish the hard work that the folks who put this together have, but they have a band here on the weekends and on Fridays, but as someone who helps manage an enhanced district in downtown, it is not rocket science that people like, and I'm going to repeat what Viggy said, drinking a beer and listening to music. And both of those things are technically possible in public parks, except for the fact that one of those is illegal and the other takes a pretty hefty sound permit that the city's not passing out every day, right? Now you say things.
On Hanover Hill on Sunday, we have a good friend Travi that puts on quite a few events. He used to do Fam Fam on Hanover Hill, and he's bringing it back. And there he had some really great DJs, and he just had a cooktop, and there was fried chicken, and we just there was Uno, there was chess, there was dominoes, and we did the thing. And it was kind of we all were why haven't we done this lately? And I think it's just when we do a picnic, we're always we got to bring the blankets, we got to bring the drinks, we got to bring the food, there's got to be entertainment. And this just cuts down on the riffraff so substantially. I think from a city perspective, maintenance and liability is probably top of the list of why this is not happening.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think this is uniquely an American problem, but I think it skews to be an American problem. Because America's very quintessentially a country where the public version of something will fail, and then all the people who are do-gooders will choose the private option. And that's true from it's true from healthcare to high-speed rail to building a park. And I think one of the challenges is that our society is so compliance based. Everyone is scared of litigation. Companies are scared of litigation. What do you see? Cars and more cars. Yeah, it's everyone is really concerned about what the rules are and how to do something within a very specific sandbox. And which is kind of the wrong way to look at it. If you look at it in terms of livability, and that's the goal, then the means by which you get there become a lot clearer. And you start thinking about okay, what do we have to do to make XYZ happen? What do we have to do to make sure that families are using this space? What do we have to do to make sure that kids feel safe in this space? Like, I think our sort of like central question is the thing that's missing, and we have no metrics or measurement. It's not like you get funding based upon how many people use a park. And so like the thing is, like, if you did, then how would that change the way in which you design a park?
Yeah, absolutely. And to take sort of a hard pivot to the professional world and in the micromobility world, I'm so happy, Viggy, you mentioned litigation and litigiousness. I mean, that is so central to our world. And, our regulators in the space love to talk about, commute trips and love to talk about basically anything that's not quote unquote joyriding. Well, one of the things that could be not joyriding, be picking your kid up from childcare, would be getting, another family member somewhere. My company, to toot our own horn here, one of the things that make us unique is we design our own hardware. We're designing a 2-seat shared vehicle because sometimes you need to take a passenger with you. Sometimes you have someone who is vision impaired who can't drive their own vehicle, and so maybe they could be a passenger. But one of the use cases for that is you could have a 12-year-old, you could have a 14-year-old who maybe couldn't ride the vehicle themselves, but absolutely could be a passenger. But their insurance and legal sort of complexities to that are through the roof. And so it is like one of the ways that, you have a private, and again, Viggy, your point about like, you sort of take all this private, one of the myriad ways where the private world doesn't have the complexity that this public world does, even though our vehicle is a solution where you don't have to buy a $2,500 e-bike. You could pay $6 for one trip. The permitting, the regulatory issues, the city essentially being scared of its own shadow prevent that type of use case.
Can I just repeat back to what I'm hearing? I don't even maybe disagree with you, but I want to name it out loud. Are we saying that public parks are the way they are because the city is afraid of liability?
I think that's a component of it, but I think it's more so that what makes a successful park isn't incentivized. So like, essentially, like if you want a park that's used by people of all different types, then you should incentivize the creation of that type of park. But like, you can do that through policy. Like we could essentially say that like cities get funding for parks based on usage, right? But like nobody does that. It's not like governments aren't treated like, hey, like, we have this person that's like using our services, because I think that it doesn't mean that it's always going to be great, right? Like, it's like, I think like a lot of the rest of the world, whether it's like Japan or Europe, is a lot better at having this sort of like user-based governance system. Like a lot of other countries have like a front desk for government. If I want to go file my taxes, get a new passport, or I need a driver's license, you can go to the same desk to like do all of the above. And it doesn't make a whole but what we do instead is we're like, this is how this thing works. And then this other thing works completely differently. And this other thing works completely differently. And for like a city planner, I would imagine, I'm actually curious about how the planners feel here. Like, the thing it seems to me is like, you can be as like well-intentioned as you want, but you're basically coming in and you're like, you get, a couple of inches within which you get to make actual decisions that are meaningful. And the rest of it is like overly codified. Like, I'm gonna give another sort of like strange example, but Oakland passed a ballot initiative many years ago that like added property taxes, and then the property tax receipts were used to fund school libraries. But the amount of money that's delegated to each school is like less than $20,000, right? And so now everyone's paying these taxes that that are earmarked for libraries. Schools don't need, like, they're not sitting there being like, I need a librarian. So the principal and the leadership can't use those funds to go and acquire a school resource officer or additional teachers or like things that would be actually beneficial. Instead, what we've done is we've created the system where we're just taxing ourselves for things that go into earmarked funds that don't actually go into anything. And so like our governance is like deeply broken in this way. Like I think all of us live in Alameda County, and we have generally high taxes and service delivery is horrendous.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Viggy, and I'm going to pivot slightly here, but on the list of taxes, all of us, I think, yeah, except for Sam, pay a tax for parks. There is a special line item in property tax for parks. And I do appreciate your point about like, what are the different ways to motivate a government agency to support the use of our parks. And I'm going to stand up for our like Oakland Parks and Rec department for a second. You know, one of the least or poorly funded departments. And I agree with you that some of it is money. Absolutely. Some of it is also liability. Totally. But I still think there's something missing. And maybe it's just that I don't know if we're asking for this or it's not clear to me, but I want to give you an example of something I learned last year while running for office. Door to door, I asked people, especially parents, what would it take for you to use this park with your kids? And every single one of them said, aside from keeping it clean, that they just wanted a fence around the play area. They're like, that's all I'm asking for is to have a fence so that I can let my guard down. And I thought to myself, I'm like, that is a very inexpensive capital improvement that we could easily program in next year to just upgrade all of our parks. Some of them already have this, to put a fence around the play area. And so many moms especially were like, I can't let my guard down if my kid is playing on this play structure. And you've all kind of danced around this a bit, because if I turn my back, he'll be in the street before I know it. And fences, no offense, are not expensive when it comes to like parks, right? Or even, and we all know this, having worked with and for cities, the millions and millions of dollars of capital improvements that come through a city, right, in planning and funding, to make a public park match, at least from a design standpoint, the aspects that each one of you have identified. The world's no offense to the folks here, but like the world's tiniest area of sand.
We could all build a smart if we want, like that sandbox. We could build that smart.
Well, and I guess that's kind of the point I'm pushing towards, is that we could have a sandbox that's 6 by 6. We could have a fence around our parks. Neither of these are rocket science, nor are they expensive. And I guess one of the challenges I'm making both to us and to cities out there, not just Oakland or East Bay cities for that matter, is that I don't think we're that far away from the thing we all want, save for drinking in a park. And to be clear,
I think the co-location piece is the piece that's missing, though.
It's not that hard to drink in a park.
If you think about it, like Lake Merritt is a park, right? Like Lake Merritt is popping every day, all times a day, right? With such a diverse group of people. So I think there is parks that are working. I would say the neighborhood park that is 3 blocks from me, that park is always popping. And it's just the fact that it has a skate park, it has a soccer field, it has a playground, it's got a community garden. But it's more that it's like literally in the middle of the neighborhood, and there's a little bit of everything for everybody, you know?
And you all have said that about this space, though, right? It's
Yeah.
got several different restaurants. It's got a play area. It's got beer. It's got bike station. You're right. Like it has a little bit of everything.
So it's co-locating things that work for everybody. But I do also think there's a marketing concept.
Yeah.
If I must say.
There is. What do you guys think about accessing though? Like, how did we all get here?
Yeah.
I mean, I drove.
It's true.
I live in East Oakland. I'm off the 98th, and so I drive. Even I work in an industry that promotes options for more sustainable. But that's the thing. It's the options for me. But I myself, I need to drive. I could definitely take the bus, but I would have been 30 minutes
Yeah,
late.
you wouldn't be here on time.
I wouldn't be here on time. And so there's a bike lane out there. There's bike parking here. Transit, you might have to walk.
Yeah, it's why I didn't take
There are 2 buses that run up here. I will tell you that. But I think it's, and I'll kind of repeat a bit about what you said, Audrey, is that it's not that everyone needs to walk or bike or drive here. It's that everyone has a different milieu of options, right? And I'm, for folks who can't see, right? Oh, hey, no, come over. It's half of the.
I brought my child.
I love it. Yeah. Hi, baby.
Yeah.
Here, you have to introduce yourself. You're in the shot, so say hi.
I'm Jess Heintzelman.
So, for everyone who, oh my goodness. Well, and what people on our pod will know soon enough is that we're going to interview Jess about access to bathrooms in cities. Yeah. Exactly. So looking forward to that. Yeah, and bathrooms, and that's the other aspect that is in spades here at this space. Bathrooms. Right? Clean bathrooms.
That is the closest park to my house, which is Splash Pad Park, which is lovely. It has a library. It's right on the lake. The bathrooms are always revolting. And so, like, we leave the house, we're on a timer before the kid has to go to the bathroom again. And so that is always a blocker. It is directly across the street. Like we were just talking about access to the park. It is directly across the street from one of the probably top 5 worst intersections in Oakland at Lakeshore and MacArthur. Like once a month, we kind of want to sell our house because that intersection is so bad and we can't get anywhere without going through that intersection. And so like access is, it's one thing for me to traverse it. It's one thing for me to ride my bike here, but there's a world where my wife, Lisa, is grudgingly okay with me riding here. There's not a world where she's going to be like, yeah, put the kid on the back.
I totally get that. We get in fights all the time about whether or not like the kid goes in the back or you even ride at all this time of day. Like it's a safety, real safety issue. And then it becomes conflict internally of like, how do you get there? And the least conflicting conversation that we have is like, we're just going to drive there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it plays directly into, Audrey, what you were saying about the time involved, even, daycare pickups. We're a family of 3. We have 1 car, and there are lots of things where it's like I could be one of myself or Lisa could need the car for work. So what's the other one going to do for preschool pickup? It's, it could be a bus. But that bus is it's a 12-minute drive home or a 45-minute bus home. And like, that's just crazy. Like, that's bananas to have to make that choice. So it's like, then the other person takes a Lyft and, or an Uber. And then it's like, well, we're just perpetuating the problem. And so you're just kind of lose-lose in a lot of these situations.
I'm hearing some of these like micro challenges or macro challenges like kind of coming together. There's like the liability piece. There's the like, are the incentives in the right places for public space or even private spaces? And then there's the larger transportation challenge around how do you actually get to these places? But like, based on where you guys sit and your expertise and like what you've seen in this life, as could wave a magic wand, what would the things be? What would the things be to create more spaces like this? Would they be like, would you put it all in the incentives and like let the market work itself in some ways? Is it about like revamping the way that we actually think about planning these spaces, like the diversity of things that are in a public space? I feel like we're just missing the mark and we're a day late and a dollar short every time.
Well, and Sam, I'm going to say several critical things for a second in the most polite way I can. Some of the best things that are happening in West Oakland are, to use a special word, variances in our city code. So where we are situated right now isn't zoned for restaurants and community gathering. Laws had to be changed to allow for this to be here. This is all an exemption from what the city says officially should belong here. So big government hat for a second. If we want something, we have to go back into our, 100-year-old rules and say, am I preventing this? Right. And just to give you a really candid example, West Oakland is a food desert. These are some of the only restaurants in this entire area now. But for as much as people will say, oh, there are no grocery stores in this neighborhood, it is actually not allowed. Like, you can't build a grocery store here without a whole bunch of conditions. So by extension, if we're saying we really want families to be in this neighborhood, we really want parks that allow for people to drink responsibly and eat and gather, I can think of at least a dozen permits you would need individually, let alone from a corporate standpoint, to make that happen. And so while absolutely there are some incentives there, I would start with all of the restrictions it takes just to open up a business or even a space like this in the first place.
Totally. It's funny because I feel like we as cities fight impossible fights, right? Like around affordable housing and giant transportation projects that are going to decimate certain areas or whatever it is. But we don't do a zoning overhaul in places that we're actually building housing. And like the TOD projects is like, okay, well, what about the street adjacent to it? Are we doing anything creative around there that'll meet the needs of people? And I wonder if it's a process challenge or if it's like culturally, like maybe we're just not thinking ahead as fast as cities are evolving. Does that feel?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
One thing I like worry about, I think in general, is this is true for both like the market solution and for the non-market solution. Far too often, I think one thing we do in both models is we favor who has capital. Either way, right? Like, so if you have like a highly regulated system, whoever has capital is the one who's going to win, like whatever that like zoning or like that situation is, because they have more resources. And then if it's free market, it's the same result. And I'm going to bring this up from a different lens. So I play in a punk rock band, and a huge thing in punk music is the idea that all ages venues need to exist, and they need to be widely available and accessible. And there used to be more in the Bay Area, and a lot of them have closed because they're unable to compete, and like they're unable to like pay their rents. They're unable to like, because like you can't drink there. So like instead, like so like this sort of like the reverse side of like the drinking question is that like, you know, I was talking to someone at who owns a bar here in town, and I was like, why don't you have more punk shows, or why don't you have more just sort of like kids bands playing stuff? And he was like, well, because it doesn't sell as well as bottle service. And so there's this weird, like, people are always like, why don't we have spaces for teenagers? So like different age group, but like, and a huge thing I think that happens is like we're not figuring out sort of innovative ways to get like whoever like doesn't have the capital to get the space, because like instead it's like you end up with like two different sort of versions of this. You either end up with like a neighborhood that's like filled with like Sweet Green and like these like fancy like quick service restaurants, or right, franchises, and like or like I don't know, you end up with something that looks like Santana Row for those of you who have been in like San Jose, but that's not urbanism. Like that's not a community. Like that's an amusement park. Like I think like so like sometimes when I hear from folks who have more of like a skepticism of like the market solution is going to work, the market solution produces the Santana Row version, whereas like the government intrusive version tends to produce like the very different type of the right thing isn't being built. So like I don't necessarily think there's like one of them does the thing that we're looking for. Like the thing we're like really looking for is that you have businesses of all shapes and sizes, and you have like spaces of all shapes and sizes, and that like the way you build a community is that there is a place for everyone. I honestly have no idea how you do that. Like candidly, like I think there are like cities that have created that balance somehow, either by creating a couple of special zones where there's like one zone that's zoned to be this way, another area that's zoned to be a different way. But I don't know. I'm kind of curious what you all think about that.
I think a really important factor to that, it sort of speaks to Sam's question. It speaks to the question of accessibility we were talking about earlier, and not to be too much of a transportation nerd here, but it is like
the transportation nerd.
Like, the best and most scalable and most like capital efficient solution out there is like bike lanes and bus lanes everywhere. You don't have to have the mega project. You don't have to tunnel under Geary Street all the way out
Not
to the
to
ocean.
toot my own horn here, Jeff, but I have to say this because I'm going to toot my own horn for a second. The Oakland Slow Streets program during COVID was $200,000.
Right.
The entire citywide program was $200,000. And for reference, one bikeway improvement on one corridor is like $15 million.
I mean, a certain kind of bikeway improvement on one corridor. It's like we are making a series of choices about how we want to do that, and we're making it part of a Dig Once project, and we're, you know, doing all sorts of things. Whereas, like, look, is it going to be the absolute like MUCTD, like NACTO gold standard bike program? Like, maybe not. But does paint and bollards go a very long way and make things a lot safer for a lot of people? Absolutely. And that's how I think that is also something I think Oakland has done reasonably well. San Francisco, I think, has done reasonably well. Is like let an impermanent solution be the proof point for a much more permanent solution. And so I think that is a scalable solution that is not terribly capital intensive in the big picture sense, that also serves sort of Biggie's point earlier of like, how do you serve all shapes and sizes? Is like, make it accessible for people who ride the bus, make it accessible for people who bike. Sure, you can still drive there despite what other people will say. You put a bike lane, you put a bus lane somewhere, you're not preventing people from driving there. Like, you really can serve all comforts that way.
I feel like we always come to the same, when I have these conversations on Beyond Streets, I feel like we come to the same conclusion in many ways, that the problem is, or the challenge, I should say, is scale. It's like at a neighborhood level, at a small city level, we can do all kinds of things, right? And I think there's like a couple of steps before that, right? Like it's like we agree that this is a good thing, and that's like the biggest problem sometimes.
That we can't agree on what
we
works.
can't agree on it, and then we go through the process itself, and then the end looks like a camel. Like it was supposed to be a horse, but it's a freaking camel at the end. And so I sometimes wonder where the hack is around scale, because for a city of 10 million people or a county of 10 million people, whatever Los Angeles is at this point, like we do the Dig Once, and then you get a half a mile of some shitty bike lane. And so at the end of that half a mile, somebody just died. Like, what happens at the end of that, you know?
I think, and this is maybe I'll leave this to our listeners for later, but maybe one of the things we should explore is like, how big does the scale need to be before you stop? Right? This space, the Prescott Market Hall,
Need scale.
right? This space works here.
Because I think it's more just like, I think it would be ideal if there was a place where we were able to recognize when there is a gem
Yes.
and we were able to infuse capital where there is already investment made, right? And then be able to think about what else could be co-located here that makes sense to really enrich this space. But I think that gets us back to community engagement, right? And I think there are pockets throughout all of Oakland, throughout all of Alameda County, where people are putting in investment. Some people have more capacity to put in more investment than others. And, you know, there should be some, you know, equity in that respect. But I think overall, like, to Viggie's point about getting to this cookie cutter kind of approach of like, you know, corporations coming in, like I know in San Francisco, we have Formula One retail. Anytime there's like anybody has more than 11 storefronts, that counts as Formula One retail. And so that's a big conditional use to put in. And that does make sense for those types of cities. But I think in terms of smaller cities, it's like working with what you have. And I just think there's like, I used to be a transportation purist. You'd see me on the bike all the time. I took public transit all the time. I walked all the time. And like now that I'm a mom.
Until you had kids.
Yeah, I bought my first car and after 30 years of not having a car with my son, you know, and so like,
You caved.
I had to cave, you know, and I had a very tragic bike accident when my son was 16 months. And for me now, I really know what's at stake. Like I wasn't able to feed my son for 6 months. I wasn't able to cuddle with him. I wasn't able to do a lot of things for him. And so just like, it's easy to say like we should take public transit, we should bike. But I think there's a lot of other things that are at stake when we make those type of decisions. And so I think like, working on projects like in the Fillmore district where we're saying you should have bike lanes, and they're like, y'all didn't want to put bike lanes when we were biking, you know, and like that's something that's really valid, and they're like, we don't bike anymore, you know. And so I think it's like really going back to scale, what's fitting for this neighborhood. And I think that's what really makes each neighborhood a gem, is like really cultivating the unique character that's there. And like that's something that's going to be continually evolving and changing as people come into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like I will say, I just walked Cleveland Heights. They put in all these new truncated ramps, and that's where I spent my maternity leave.
Yeah.
And moving a stroller up and down sidewalks with no core after giving birth is terrible. And so just this week, I was like, wow, this is living. This is luxurious. This is living. And so I think it's just like, it's the small things and what are you trying to really cultivate, you know?
Before we close this out, Audrey, Jeff, any thoughts on the scale? I feel like we're, as my partner annoyingly says all the time, we're putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. And it's like so annoying and nerdy that he says that. But I do think that we always try to solve for the entire city, you know, and solving for the community is a huge win if you solve for this block, this neighborhood, whatever. And it's just, I was talking to you earlier about how it's actually like, not to get so transactional about it, but it's just more efficient, and it's like optimizing for the space itself as opposed to optimizing for the entire city doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so many thoughts here, but I've been reflecting, and I think that as we talk about community and there's no one solution, yes, it's nice idealistically to solve for a large network, but the power is in the people. We have our lived experiences. We have people that have been living here for generations and they've seen change over time. And the power in really sitting down with people, even if they're hard conversations, but having them so that we on the industry or the planning side, the government side, we also can learn from our experts, right? Connecting that with how people are moving today, looking at the data. There are certain neighborhoods that are mostly transit dependent. You have kids, like thinking about my kids when they go to middle school or high school, like I would love the idea that they can ride transit, but how early in the morning do they need to wake up to ride transit to go to school? So these are the decisions that we have to make as parents. And as planners, as people in the industry, it's also our role to listen to community so that we can work together to find that best fit. And it's always easier said than done, but really the power is in the people and making sure that they also know what their tools are.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All the information that you shared during that time in your life, so helpful. And that is our role, is informing people, like listening and informing them of their tools and letting them know how they can really impact the decisions we're all making together.
Absolutely. I think, and I guess that's a great thing to close on, I feel like, is that people have more power than they think they do, I think, in this space. And many times we're voting with our dollars, buying beer here. And, that's like a decision that we make every single day, apparently.
You're in hand.
And we vote with our feet. But at the same time, I think the purpose of this podcast is just to show that this is not just for the random fringes of society to participate in some cold, dank community commenting period. I think it's something that we ought to be thinking about every single day. Like, we are planners. Like, we are planning our children's day. We are planning our own days. And we have a say in what this looks like. And I think we need to be curious about how we do that.
Totally agree with you, Sam. Wrapping us up, I just want to give each one of you a shout out and a big thank you for taking some time out of your day to talk to you about your lived experiences as busy parents.
I hope this was kind of a treat.
Yeah.
It was. And I'm also on my way home to do bedtime.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, it's
In
probably,
time for
it's almost
bedtime.
it's about bedtime. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Viggy, who's somewhere in the parking lot chasing after his son. To Audrey and to Jeff, each of you mean so much to us, and so I really appreciate your time as we talked about this really amazing subject. Also, Viggy's adorable right now. Oh my
There
God.
you go. Yeah, he's bench
Oh
pressing
my
his
God.
child right now. So with that, what a successful episode.
Absolutely. Great job, Sam.
Great job, Warren.